Multiply exponential expressions and simplify completely. Here's the first example. So you have your two expressions, and what you want to do is work on each one separately until you can dwindle them down and easily multiply them, and then simplify again if you have to. On the first expression, there's a -2 exponent. You have to multiply every exponent in here by the -2. When you do that, you should have 2 to the -2 x squared, and then y to the 6th. On the bottom, you'll have 4 to the -2, x to the -8th, and y to the -6th. A -2 times -2 is a positive 4, and that's why I should have a 4 right here. Positive 4. And then -2 times -3 is a positive 6. Down here we have, this should be a negative, no, that's fine. Yeah, we have a -2, so that's 4 to the -2, then x to the -8th, and y to the -6th. The whole numbers, the integers, it's just that number to that power that you write down. Go over to the other side and do the same thing. Multiply everything by this positive 2 against all of the exponents. So you should have 3 to the 2nd, x to the -8th, y to the 6th, over top of 4 to the 2nd, x to the -2nd, and then y to the 4th. Now once you get to that spot, you have to simplify your negative exponents by moving them to the opposite side. So here we have 2 to the -2 power. That's the same as a 4 on the bottom. And then you have 4 to the -2. That's the same as a 16 on the top. And then this x to the 4th stays where it's at, and it's joined by this x to the -8th. And y to the 6th stays on top. It's joined by this y to the 6th. So everything's on top except that 4. On the right side, you have a 3 squared, so it stays where it's at, positive exponent. That's a 9. On the bottom, you have a 16 from 4 squared. Now your x's are both negative exponents, so they must switch and become positive. X squared on top, x to the 8th on the bottom. And then your y's are both positive here and here, so they stay where they're at, y to the 6th and then y to the 4th. Alright, so where we left off was 16x to the 4th, and then x to the 8th, y to the 6th, y to the 6th, all of that over 4, and then 9x squared, y to the 6th, over 16x to the 8th, and y to the 4th. Remember that you can cancel diagonally. Here's a 16 here and here that are gone. You don't have to have those anymore. The x's on the left side simplify to x to the 12th, and the y's simplify to x to the 12th. You just have a 4 on the bottom. On the right side, you still have a 9 on the top, but notice that your x's over top of each other, the largest one is on the bottom. 8 minus 2 is 6. And then the y's cancel out the same way, except the largest one is on the top. That's y squared. Alright, so you can multiply left to right now. This times this. 9, and then you have an x to the 12th, but you have two y terms, so y to the 12th, y to the 2nd is y to the 4th. And on the bottom, it's 4x to the 6th. You still have one more thing to simplify, and that's the x to the 12th over x to the 6th. That's x to the 6th on the top. And you're left with just a 4 on the bottom. I made a small mistake there. I left out the 1. That should be y to the 14th in that final answer. Try this one, bring it up, and drop it off. Plenty of bonus problems to hand out, so you can take your time on this. Okay, we'll start with the left-hand expression. You have to distribute the exponent of 2, so that would be 2 to the 2nd, x to the -4th, y to the 6th, over 3 to the 2nd, x to the 6th, y to the 10th. And then on the right side we'll have 4 to the negative 1, x to the 2nd, y to the negative 5th, over 3 to the negative 1, x to the negative 3rd, and y to the 2nd. Now simplify the negative exponents. You can also simplify your integers as well. You'll have a 4 on top and a 9 on the bottom, x to the 6th, and then x to the 4th on the bottom. Your y's stay in the same spot. They're both positive. And then on the right side, your 3 to the negative 1 goes to the top, and 4 to the negative 1 on the bottom. It's the first power, so they don't change. This stays where it's at on the top, and the x to the 3rd goes with it. Y to the 2nd stays on the bottom, and the y to the 5th goes with it. You can cancel out your 4's. They are gone. You can take away this 3 because it goes in the 9 3 times. So over here, you're going to end up with an x to the 5th, y to the 6th when you multiply this by this. And then on the bottom, you'll certainly have a 3. And for your x's, you'll have x to the 10th, and then y to the 15th, which comes from here. Now you have to simplify your x's and y's again. The 3 stays on the bottom. You have x to the 10th on the bottom, so that's where the x is going to stay. 10 minus 5 is 5. And y to the 15th is the largest. 15 minus 6 is 9. Nothing is on top, so you have to put a 1. I made a small mistake. This 10 and then 2 and 5 should be 17 instead of 15 here. So that way 17 minus 6 would be 11. So this should be 11th power on the y. On your first expression over there, instead of multiplying through by the negative 2 exponent, just do it like this. 4 and then over 3. You know you have an x to the 2nd on the bottom, and that x to the negative 2 goes with it. So if that x to the negative 2 is going to the bottom, it's going to add with the x to the negative 2 that's already down there. So you have x to the 4th. And this y to the negative 3rd goes to the bottom and adds with that y to the 4th. So you're going to end up with y to the 7th. And of course all of that is still to the negative 2 power. And on this side, you have 2 over 6. Reduce that to a 3 on the bottom. X to the 4th is on the top, and this x to the negative 5th here goes with it. So that's x to the 9th. And your y's will cancel out to just a y on the bottom. So maybe that's less work to do, and I'll accept that as work on homework. So when you go back through and look at this, you're going to have 4 to the negative 2 power. That's a 16, but it's got to go to the bottom. And then 3 to the negative 2 power is a 9, but it's on top, as well as the x to the 4th, which is now squared to get x to the 8th, and then y to the 14th, since that was a negative exponent. And then over here it's a positive exponent, so it's going to be x to the 27th. On the top and on the bottom, 3 to the 3rd is 27, and then you'll have y to the 3rd. From there you can cancel out 9 into itself once, into 27 3 times. So on the bottom you would have a 48, and your x's here on top, 8 and 27 is 35. And then you have y's that are diagonal. They're really over top of each other. Y to the 14th over y to the 3rd is y to the 11th. And you end up with the final answer of that. Bring this one up, drop it off. Plenty of time, plenty of bonus problems for those that finish early. On the left-hand side, you can simplify inside first. 8 over 4 is 2. And then this x to the negative 4th goes to the top, and it will combine with the other x to get x to the 8th. Your y to the 3rd over y to the 2nd is simply y on the top. I'm going to put a 1 on the bottom because this isn't the final answer. We're just doing work. And then we'll move on over to the other side. The 3 and the 4 are going to have to stay where they're at. This x to the negative 4th goes to the top and combines to get an x to the 6th. Y to the third over y to the third simply cancels out. So now back to the left side. It's a negative exponent, so the top goes to the bottom and you square everything. So you would have a 4 on the bottom, and then negative 2 times the 8 is negative 16. That's why it moves to the bottom and becomes x to the 16th. Then you'll have a y to the second. On the other side, you just flip it. 4 on top and 3x to the 6th on the bottom. Notice that this 4 and this 4 cancel out. And when you multiply straight across, you just have a 1 on the top, and on the bottom, a 3. X to the 6th, x to the 16th is x to the 22nd, and then you have a y to the second. On the